I want to now turn to some international news. Recently, President Trump brokered a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, and the first phase was underway. We saw all living hostages released from Gaza. In exchange, we saw hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees released back into Gaza. President Trump received a lot of credit for this ceasefire deal and negotiations. He declared the war is over. The Jerusalem Post had a photo of him on the front page saying, "God bless the peacemaker." Time magazine had a photo of President Trump on the cover saying his triumph. And Israelis really cheered when he visited the Middle East earlier this week. But what about the U.S. voter? How do they feel about how President handled these negotiations as well as ultimately the deal?
And so we talked about some of the lowlights, so to speak, of Trump's policy agenda, the economy. This is where he really has a highlight. And we see that a plurality approve of his handling of the Israel-Gaza war. 47% approve, 34% disapprove. So again, this is a really major highlight. We can see, why he does maintain 45% approval. That it's that high, considering that the economy is such a low issue for him. So again, big highlight here. By far his best issue. It was 30% approve, 46% disapprove in April. So it's a major improvement since earlier in the year. This shift largely comes from independents. They're now 43% approve, 38% disapprove. Although I do think it's worth noting here that foreign policy overall is just less of a priority for folks. It tracks much further down on issues. They're far more concerned about domestic policy, like the economy. But, I think a win is a win here. This is obviously a great issue for Trump. He's really struck a chord here.
And maybe a bit of a less of a win for President Trump would be another international conflict, the Russia-Ukraine war. We haven't seen much movement in terms of getting to a ceasefire deal there. President Trump earlier this year, he met with Vladimir Putin, Russia's president, as well as Ukraine's President Zelensky. He's meeting with both of them again separately. How do voters in America, though, feel that he's handled this conflict?
Yeah, it's less rosy here. So Trump's handling of the Ukraine and Russia war, we see 30% approve, 50% disapprove. So that's a minus 20 net approval. That is a very slight improvement since April of about 5 points towards approval. But this is not a great issue for him. We've seen this in the past. We've seen this throughout his presidency. Folks really don't like how he has handled the Russia-Ukraine war, and we even see a little bit of defection from Republicans in this instance. We've seen that before. We see it now. Right around 20% of Republicans disapproving. And when we look at the favorabilities of Zelensky and Putin, we get a few clues maybe as to why. So 43% have a favorable opinion of President Zelensky versus 6% for Putin. So 74% have an unfavorable opinion of Vladimir Putin. I think that speaks a lot to how the electorate feels about this, and we can maybe see some hint of why President Trump has such a low approval rating on this war.